Hello and welcome to PopFlash. I'm Jack Westerman, joined by Jason Moses O'Toole, and this is everything you need to know about Counter-Strike this week. Our first story this week is the Faceit Stage 2 finals, which took place over the weekend as part of DreamHack Valencia in Spain. There were 8 teams in attendance and $150,000 up for grabs. So, as always, Moses, let's take a look at the group stage results. What we'll see first off the bat here is that Cloud9 and Na'Vi have advanced from Group A, TSM and Fnatic have advanced from Group B, perhaps no surprise there. However, the third and fourth place team in Group A are relevant, I think. The fact that Kingwin and especially Virtus Pro down there at the bottom have been eliminated is something we should talk about. So Kingwin in this tournament had a pretty good run. Yes, won 1, lost 2, but in some of the games they looked good. They took a map off Na'Vi, and notably they beat Virtus Pro 16-0 on cash, which is remarkable no matter how you look at it. Are Kingwin improving, do you think, Moses, or was this a bit of an outlier for Virtus Pro? Were they already mentally out of the tournament by this point?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think it's more so an outlier for Virtus Pro. I mean, getting beat 16-0 at this level of play, that just doesn't happen, and that's insane. And it's been some time since we've seen Virtus Pro at the level that we want to see them at. So I think it's more so on VP underperforming, because I didn't think Kingwood did anything that special. But here's the thing about them is they're a team full of aimers. This is a team put together with 5 very, very talented individuals. When they catch fire like that, that's what can happen. When they're all clicking on, when they're all playing very, very well, they're a scary team, and they just showed it there.
Right, well, speaking of scary teams, let's jump over to Group B, because this was almost, if you're Ninjas in Pajamas and Liquid looking at Group B, you've got to be sweating a little bit.
You're not too happy.
Well, exactly. The top 2 teams in the world, arguably, Fnatic and TSM, come out in Group B, and Ninjas in Pajamas were eliminated. It was a tough group for them, and Get Right said, you have to excuse them a little bit because they were experimenting, they were trying new stuff at this LAN. But this week it's also emerged that NIP have pulled out of the CEVO LAN finals, which are taking place this weekend. Do you think that result, the fact that they're experimenting, they're pulling out of tournaments, does that spell bad news for NIP in your eyes?
I mean, the bad news is that they haven't been playing at a great level for some time now, and I think this is just a product of them trying new things. This is just a product of this insane schedule that teams just don't have time when they need to make some kind of a massive overhaul in their play style or their team. They don't have the time to do it. So yeah, they were probably trying new things. Like Natu hasn't had a lot of time to work with them in practice. There are those rumors of, much like there's a front shakeup going on right now, there's going to be a Swedish shuffle coming up pretty soon. But I know that NIP, this lineup, is going to try everything they possibly can before resorting to that kind of a tactic. And I think dropping out of CEVO, they just want some time before the major to see what they can do, to prepare to change some things. They absolutely need it. And that's what it takes now in this day to find that time to practice, is to drop out of tournaments.
Okay, well, on this occasion, NIP didn't go through. We're back on Faceit Stage 2. So Cloud9, Na'Vi, TSM, and Fnatic were the 4 teams that went through to the bracket, the semi-finals. So if we take a look at that graphic now. So the first thing I want to talk about here is Fnatic. We talked about just their... Well, we saw them in the group. They lost a map to TSM in their group stage match. And here against Cloud9, they've lost 2-0. Which, for the best team in the world, is pretty remarkable, right? Straight maps to Cloud9, who previously, until a few events ago, were a bit of an underdog, right?
Yeah.
Is this just a blip on the radar for what will be considered one of the world's best teams for Fnatic, or is this a downward trend for those guys?
I think it's starting to turn into a downward trend. You go back towards, even before the Pro League finals, but for me, the Pro League finals, working with Devil Walk there for a whole week. Talking about the cracks that he heard in their communication, talking about how they all seem stressed. I think there was even a round where Pronax slammed. I think Semler tweeted out that Pronax slammed his keyboard down on the table. I mean, you're seeing frustration out of this team that we've never seen before, and this is much, much more than just a blip on the radar for this team. But you're exactly right. They will be considered one of history's best teams in CSGO, but right now they're having some issues, and you don't see them improving. You see them deteriorating even more and becoming more and more of an issue. But don't take that away from Cloud9. They're still an incredibly tough team to beat.
Just on that topic, actually, you've kind of alluded to Fnatic having a bit of a slump. A lot of teams have been having a slump at the moment. Envy have, Titan are on the down slump, Virtus Pro. There's all these top tier 1 teams, people call them, that are kind of on a downswing at the moment. Do you think that's contributed to Cloud9's ascension to the top a little bit?
Perhaps a little bit, but I mean, I don't want to take any credit away from them because they're playing absolutely fantastic. I mean, they're playing great in these past, 3 or 4 events that they've been to. So let's not take that away. I mean, these are still the hardest teams in the world to beat. Like, regardless of these, you can see them go up against, Virtus Pro or go against each other, and they're still very, very, very difficult teams to close out on. So for Cloud9 to do this is still very, very impressive.
All right, nicely defended. And if we have a look at the grand final, so in the grand final, of course, TSM won the whole tournament. They took the first place prize at Faceit Stage 2, and in the end, they beat Cloud9 pretty badly. It was 16-14 on Cash, but then on Mirage, it was just a blowout, right? 16-2, exactly. However, take-home points, I guess, Cloud9 were in their 3rd consecutive finals. It was their 3rd finals appearance. What do we learn from that?
Well, for me, I'm on the Cloud9 train. I was saying that this was going to be that event that really solidified if they were going to be like this consistent contender, and I think they are now. I think they've gotten to that point, and now they definitely have the confidence. Their group stage was really scary, with Na'Vi being one of the best teams in Virtus Pro, who they've always struggled against, and they managed to beat both of them. Or actually, they didn't play Virtus Pro based on that group format. But here's the thing. Cloud9's becoming known as this team, as like this, with Sean at the helm, as this anti-strat team, this team that needs to learn their opponent before they can beat him. So, they lose to Fnatic and then they beat Fnatic. They lost to Na'Vi and then they beat Na'Vi. And then they play TSM for the first time, and they get beat up pretty bad by them. I think the Mirage thing is they've touched on it in interviews, is that they need to learn either Mirage or Inferno. And they chose to go with Mirage, but they've only had like a week or 2 of time of actively trying to learn it on a level where they can compete with the Europeans. So that's not too surprising, really. That series was lost in the cash match, and they talk about that in interviews. But I mean, this is a Cloud9 team that's deepening their map pool now. They're gaining confidence as they get to these finals, and they're going to remain a scary lineup for some time.
For our second topic this week, we're going to have a look at the big French roster changes that took place just earlier this week between EnVyUs and Team Titan. And as always, we do have a nice graphic here. So Moses, as we have a look at the 2 players that moved across. So for you guys at home, Titan on the left have picked up Shox and Smiths, and Team EnVyUs on the right have picked up Apex and Kenny S. Basically, a straight trade, 2 for 2. So why does this trade make sense?
I mean, there have been rumors about this for some time, whether it's down to the EnVyUs players partying a little bit too much at events and, not being completely focused on the matches at hand, and just to Titan's general underwhelming performance with the players they had. They've never reached that kind of potential that we thought they had. So both of these teams have spent a long time and worked really hard at trying to fix these issues, and it hasn't happened. Sometimes you just have to make that change. And NBK talked about it. It just kind of came down to there was a little bit of a split in the team on how they wanted to move forward and how they wanted to change and improve things within the squad. And it just didn't work out in the way of Shox and Smiths.
Do you foresee these 2 lineups, but particularly the EnVyUs lineup, going on to do great things again?
Yeah. I actually expect both of them to do pretty well, and I think it's something that's going to come down to... Well, you remember the last French shuffle that happened when these 2 teams were like LDLC and Titan? It was actually Titan that looked better in the first month or 2 that they were around, and then LDLC kind of stormed back and they just took over from there. And I think it's going to kind of be a similar situation. I think Titan's going to look pretty solid early on with this lineup, and if Shox can get back to his hard carry days, that'll be really scary, and they can stay consistent with that one. But I think Envy is going to actually end up in the long term on the better end of the spectrum. I think the freedom and the play style of EnVyUs is going to let Kenny S kind of be himself, kind of return to his form, give him a lot of space to work with that AWP and how he wants to utilize it. And I think that'll actually turn out to be really well. But it is going to come down to which one of these 2 players, Kenny S versus Shox, is going to come out of their slump and reach that level that we've seen them both be at in different portions of the CSGO history.
Last but not least, this week I've got some quick fire questions for you, Moses. So, quick as you can, give me your thoughts on the following news stories from the week. First off, Simple took a 2-day retirement from CS before quickly announcing that he was back on a team called Evolution.
Yeah, that retirement, right? Well, here's the thing. He said he wanted to take a break and kind of learn how to be a little bit of a better teammate. But then he comes back and he says he's made a team with all of these former teammates that he's played with. That this is the team he wanted to make. So hopefully that improves some things for him in terms of his attitude.
Yeah, well, 2 days is plenty of time to learn how to communicate, I guess. Next up, the Cologne qualifiers, the Asian qualifiers for ESL Cologne took place last weekend, and Renegades and Team Immunity, the 2 Australian teams, advanced to the final event.
Yeah, that's pretty cool because we saw Immunity at a Gfinity actually have some pretty decent results as well. So it's cool to see the 2 Australians come in there. I would have liked to have seen an Asian team actually. That Sky Red team actually impressed me a little bit watching them. Mongols have probably the coolest jerseys I've seen in some time. That would have been cool to see on the stage in Cologne. But either way, congrats to the Aussies getting involved.
And very last topic for you, the former Keyed Stars have dropped their sponsor and they've replaced ZQK with Cold.
Yeah, really curious to see. Keyed Stars came out with their statement. It said that they parted on mutual terms because there's a better opportunity for the players, which is awesome. So really interested to see who that's going to be. Cold is someone we don't know much about, but the Brazilian team has talked about when this changes or the scene. They've talked about that Cold is actually a really solid player, and there's been some frag clips of him playing against the former Keyed Stars lineup before he joined it, of just him beating down on them at certain portions. So we'll see how that trade or how that pickup goes. One of the things that Keyed Stars' weaknesses was their reliance on a double op setup with ZQK and Fallen. So it'll be interesting to see if Fallen switches to a more op heavy roller if they keep a 5 rifle setup. But either way, eliminating that double op reliance is going to be good for them.
That's it for this week. I'm Jack Westerman, joined by Jason and Moses O'Toole.
And we'll be back next week for another episode of PopFlash.